reason number 33 to get a Nissan. The cold. Because winter isn't done with us yet. Good thing the 2026 Nissan Rogue was built to conquer all conditions. With intelligent all-wheel drive, standard heated front seats, heated steering wheel, and heated mirrors, you can leave the worst of winter out in the cold. Lease the 2026 Nissan Rogue S starting at 0.4% for up to 36 months. Includes a 0.5% loyalty rebate for qualifying Nissan customers. Until March 2nd on approved credit. Conditions apply. Details at Nissan.
Robin Flynn filling in for Elias Makos with you until 12 p.m. Ooh, this is a difficult story for me because I have a lot of strong opinions, surprisingly, on the fact that, you know, a lot of our fresh produce is wrapped in plastic. Are we really doing enough to cut down on waste? Nearly half of the fresh fruits and vegetables sold in grocery stores are packaged in plastic. This is according to a recent federal report. The study analyzed 40 commonly sold produce items and revealed that plastic packaging is used primarily for items like grapes, right? They come in that bag that's full of holes, berries that come in those little pop top plastic packages, and lettuce, which is like basically shrink wrapped if you're buying a head of iceberg or something. So while some packaging is obviously necessary for protection and transport, there are environmental concerns that are prompting calls for action to reduce plastic waste. Joining us now is Sylvain Charlebois. He's the food professor, senior director of Agri-Food Analytics Lab, and professor of faculties of management and agriculture at Dalhousie University. And he joins us now. Hi, Sylvain. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am great. So this is where I get so frustrated because I can't get a plastic bag at checkout when I'm at the grocery store. So everything inside my reusable bag, though, is wrapped in plastic. So that's tremendously frustrating as a consumer, being told you can't have this item because plastic is bad, but all of these things are still wrapped in plastic. It feels a little hypocritical almost, Sylvain.
A little. I mean, basically, over the last few years, we've been aiming at implementing policies to tackle the cosmetic side of the use of plastics at the grocery store. So plastic utensils, bags, and things that are very visible. But the real problem is packaging. You're absolutely right. Packaging represents a huge volume, and it's been extremely difficult to really single out one solution. And a lot of manufacturers, even farmers out there, are saying, well, we can't replace plastics. Well, this new report basically is saying, well, yes, in some cases, no, but we can reduce the use of plastics when it comes to packaging in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I watched, I don't know if you saw it, there's a documentary on Netflix called Buy Now that's all about overconsumption. And they were, specifically at one point, they were looking at Shein, the clothing manufacturer, and how a lot of that clothing ends up in, you know, landfills and in the oceans. And I was watching this documentary as I was drinking a soda that I'd picked up on my way home. And I'm sipping through a paper straw that is basically disintegrating into my drink as I'm watching this documentary about how we need to do more. And I'm like, it's frustrating because I think very often we are told that we need to do more, but the same rules don't seem to apply to those big corporations. So, you know, how realistic would it be to force these big corporations to also reduce plastic packaging? Are there alternatives that can protect, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, a bag of grapes. Yeah, we can stick it in maybe a paper bag or something, but I understand for like a head of iceberg lettuce, if it's not shrink wrapped, you're going to lose half of the leaves before it makes it to the store.
Exactly. I think it's important to underscore the fact that you can't really have one cookie cutter approach to everything. I think every product requires a different approach. Let's face it, it's not tomorrow that we'll stop eating produce that have grown in California or Arizona. That's not going to stop like tomorrow. So we need to think about logistics. When you think about aesthetics at the grocery store, I mean, you were talking about you were just mentioning about the paper straws. I mean, paper straws really don't offer a great experience, but the technology is improving. They're getting better at it. And so I think we need to be patient with ourselves. We need to be patient with the industry, because at the end of the day, you don't want to compromise food affordability. Because the argument out there is that if you actually change packaging, if you replace plastics, it will cost us more to feed ourselves. And that's the last thing that I think grocers want, because if they do that, then everyone actually pays the price. So you want to progressively change things, being and adopt a very targeted approach depending on the product you're looking at.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to get consumers involved in the process. They used to have those really, really thin plastic bags where you could pick out your tomatoes or your apples and put them in that little bag. But they make like reusable mesh bags that are really, really small. So if we could, stow those in our trunks with our reusable grocery bags, that could be an alternative as well. Just have the produce out there. So that's an option. I also think that we do need a little bit of common sense. Like, for example, when I used to, back in the day, Sylvain, when you could get plastic bags when you were shopping at the grocery store, I would reuse those plastic bags. They would become the garbage bag in my kitchen. I would use them to clean my cat's litter box. Like, they were not single use for me. The thing is, I still have those needs, right? I still need a bag in my garbage can. I still need a bag to clean my cat's litter box. So what I ended up doing was buying plastic bags. So my plastic consumption did not go down. It just costs me more, which is extremely frustrating. It doesn't seem like I've done anything to help the environment. I'm still using the same amount of plastic. So I think maybe we need to put our thinking caps on. I don't know if we need to come up with something.
But consumer behavior is also an interesting thing. I mean, we're creatures of habits, and so it right now, most people are starting to get used to bringing bags to the grocery store and not buying more. And of course, the last few years, I know a lot of people are listening to us right now and probably are saying, well, I've bought 20,000 reusable bags, and that's another problem. But as we mature, as we actually get a grip on our addiction to plastic, I think more and more people will be will adapt and will make different choices, make a difference. But again, going back to the packaging issue, I actually think that we're starting to realize that something can be done to reduce our plastic addiction. But again, we can't really apply the same rule for all products. If you go to Europe, I was actually in Europe a couple of weeks ago, and you go into the produce section, it's pretty clear. I mean, that it's very different there, and you can see that the dependency on plastic is not as predominant there than here. So we could actually aim to do that, but there is some plastic in Europe, and so I think over time you'll see the same thing in Canada.
Interesting. The other thing that I think maybe is a great option here is to not just reduce our dependency and our addiction on plastic, but to reduce our dependency and addiction on having whatever we want when we want it. So I always shop for my produce when it's in season. I get my squashes and things like that in the fall. In the summer is when I'm going to eat berries and corn on the cob. I don't assume to want to buy these things out of season because, first of all, they don't taste as good. But I think also shipping those products from other parts of the world is an expectation that perhaps should shift. Maybe we should shift more to, buying in season. Then you can bring it home and freeze it if you like. But I think maybe that would be an option as well to reduce some of that plastic waste, is the expectation that we should have access to everything from all over the world all year long. I don't think that's reasonable.
Well, yeah, I mean, at the same time, people want choice. But most importantly, especially these days, is people want affordable food. And that's why we import food from elsewhere. And but we did, I do agree with you, Robin. I think we lost track in terms of seasonality, what's available. If you ask a lot of people in Montreal, I think some people may not even know that there is such a thing as strawberry season for local strawberries in Quebec, for example. And so I think because of food inflation, I think people are starting to really reconsider. They're asking more questions. They're trying to understand where their food is coming from, why prices are as high as they are now. That's the kind of questions we're getting more at the lab. And so and the more people know about food systems, the better off we are, and the better we'll be able to appreciate the role of plastics and packaging in general.
Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor, senior director at Agri-Food's Analytics Lab, and professor of faculties of management and agriculture at Dalhousie University. It is always a pleasure to connect with you, Sylvain. Really appreciate your time today.
Happy holidays.